is a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
No, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself. I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin. Would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm gonna have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Well, off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey. You can also find us on Facebook.com, The Hockey Podcast, YouTube.com, The Hockey Podcast, where we are sitting currently at 100 and Roberto Luongo amount of subscribers. For that, we'll be able to line that in there, and then you can subscribe to the audio as soon as this is over. You better get used to us. We are going to be on a lot as the playoffs finally begin. Devin, the playoffs are here, and your team is the only, out of all of us, your team is the only one that is in the playoffs. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Devin has a team.
That's fair.
I have two teams, yes. One of the East, one of the West on a normal season. And yes, one of them is in. And you know what? No one can take that away from me. You can shit on me all you want. But the fact is that Vancouver just wasn't good enough this year.
Congrats, Kevin.
Thanks, Mitch.
And Sean, hello.
Hello. Yes. We've got, but it's the beginning of the NHL playoffs, and the Canucks are playing. It's that weird, but they are playing.
Yeah, for a regular season game. This is so pandemic. And how pandemic and Canuck. And joining us from the bottom line view, the man of football, the man who breaks it all down, but takes off his football hat, takes off his Cam Newton jersey, puts on his Sidney Crosby jersey. Mitch Milani, what is going on?
Yeah, not much, man. Like I said to you guys, I'm just pumped for some hockey, some real hockey to get going. I think the NHL playoffs is as big of an NFL guy as I am. Like the initial start, that first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, it gets no better than that. So I'm pumped.
All right, and we will have questions. If you have questions and comments, we'll get to those as well as we go through this. I'll deal with that in a second here. But I guess I want to start kind of like with the series that is exciting you the most. Like, what is the one series that's like, man, this series I cannot wait to watch? I have a couple of nominees. I'll start, and then maybe I'll go Mitch, Devin. I think underrated intrigue is Minnesota, Las Vegas. I think that's very interesting. The Florida series, I think, will be an early nominee. Pittsburgh and the Islanders, Mitch, that's interesting. Washington, I don't think that there's a series in the U.S. anyway that doesn't have some sort of interest to me.
Yeah, you're right. I think especially the ones in the East. I mean, you look at those four teams and how competitive they are and their rivalries that go back and forth, and pretty much the physicality of those series, I think is going to be off the charts. In terms of me, I'll throw one out there. I think it's Washington-Boston. You know, I'm a Pens fan, but like Washington-Boston is just everything you want from a playoff series in terms of a little old school hockey, a little new school hockey. You have, like I said, the physicality, but you also have the skill. You have some rivalries. Marchand versus Chara. I mean, I can't wait for that. Tom Wilson in the mix, just gooning people all the time. You have OV. So, I mean, those two teams are legitimate Stanley Cup contenders every year, and I think we're going to see that in the first round.
Have the Bruins turned face to borrow a wrestling phrase. Like when you compare them to Washington, who have had a mess of problems this year with players not following COVID protocols. Then you've got the Tom Wilson clown circus, and now, like, are the Boston Bruins a face now? I don't think I'm ready for that.
It's like when I guess you would have a WrestleMania main event and one guy's a longtime heel, but like the fans are cheering for him in this match unexpectedly. That's kind of what we're seeing with the Washington Boston, I think.
I'm going to step in here and say, no, Boston sucks. I hate them. And I will never cheer for them.
Fair enough.
End of story. Because I'm a Toronto fan, obviously.
And you don't want to see them in the playoffs.
No, God, no. I actually did some research to make sure that if Toronto and Boston make it to the Final Four, if there's a chance that they were going to be facing off each other, but they're not.
Good.
Thankfully.
So what you're saying is it's going to be a Game 7 Stanley Cup final loss for the Leafs versus the Bruins.
I don't know. How does that feel? I don't know how that feels.
It's not good.
Talking to the Canucks fans, jeez. But going back to the series here, every single one for me in this first round is going to be interesting in some sort of way. The only one that has a little bit of lackluster for me is Colorado St. Louis. I don't see that being very, very close, just with how inconsistent St. Louis has been this year, and just I just don't see it going well for them. But the ones that really intrigue me is obviously the Florida matchup, Florida-Tampa Bay. I love the fact that they've been so testy against each other going into this playoffs, and just that storyline is going to be great. Obviously, watching Sam Bennett, seeing how well he does, he could, if Florida goes far and if they go to the finals, he could definitely have a Conn Smythe Trophy within his grasp there, just knowing how he can play. So that might be a bit of a hot take. We'll see how that goes. Hey, he's been playing out of his mind. So if he continues that, then we'll be good. But I think also the Edmonton-Winnipeg one is going to be very intriguing. Just to see, okay, does McDavid and Draisaitl go absolutely insane on the Winnipeg's depth, and whether or not Connor Hellebuck can step up and be the goalie he has been in the past. And I really do love the Pittsburgh New York one as well. The fact that 2 years ago New York swept Pittsburgh, I'm sure Mitch remembers that.
We don't like to talk about that. We don't like to talk about the last 2 years.
That's fair. Completely understandable. But it's high octane offense within Pittsburgh. Malkin, Crosby, Carter, Gensel, McCann, going down the list there. It's kind of scary. But then you have the defensive-minded Barry Trotz team in New York Islanders. So that one's really intriguing for me.
I'm surprised you didn't say anything about former Leaf Kasperi Kapanen. Because he's right up there. Like, I've got the 5-on-5 point totals for Pittsburgh for the regular season up, and he's third. He's only 2 points back of Crosby, and he played 15 less games.
Yeah, he's played amazing. I once again talk about cheering for ex players that have been on my two favorite teams. He's definitely one of them, and. Very, very intriguing to see where he fits in within that lineup, and if he will be on one of those top two lines. If not, he's going to be playing with either Malkin, Crosby, or Carter as a center, which is crazy.
He's most likely going to be playing with Malkin. At least that's where he's been playing most of the year, and I think he's one of those players that could get them going, or get Malkin going specifically, which is needed for them to go far in the playoffs. But every time he's on the ice, he stands out because of that speed, and the forecheck he brings has been awesome to that team too.
Sean, did we get your?
Mine is Tampa, Florida. We've seen that rivalry really kick off in the past week or so, having a line brawl at one point, and It's something that I want to see some. We're going to see some old school hockey out of a couple of the newer teams here, and that's going to be fun. And hopefully that helps build some fan bases, bring some new fans into the fold down in Florida, especially for the Panthers. Tampa Bay is actually, I feel, is an underrated hockey market, especially when the playoffs roll around. So I really do think that that's going to be one of the best series to watch. And then I've decided that I'm going to hop on the Minnesota Wild bandwagon to follow them. For friends of the show, Isha and State of Hoppy, I just want to see what they can do, because especially versus St. Louis, they've got not St. Louis, Vegas. They've got a chance. They seem to have Vegas's number. In 8 games, they're 5-1, 0-2. Like, they seem to be able to compete with Vegas a lot better than other teams can. So I think that series is going to be fun to watch as well, because I think it's going to be it's going to be fun to watch, see who steps up out of both those teams. Vegas is a little more veteran laden, and Minnesota has got some young players: Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson-Ek, Kevin Fiala. That's how we saw 2 of those guys really step up and show what they can do in the play-in series last year in the bubble. And then they've got that blue line, which is one of the better blue lines in the league.
Yeah. I think it's a good thing for Vegas. It's not about the salary cap in the playoffs, because they could barely field a hockey team near the end there. But just to go back to Pittsburgh here for a question, we got a couple of comments I wanted to point out here. Hot Take Hockey, give me a Leafs Bruins Cup final. That would be the most unreal win or the worst loss. Can you imagine?
Oh, talk about slaying the dragon. Really, that would be he's right, probably the best feeling in the world if that did happen, if they did win. But yeah, the amount of remorse and just shitty ass feeling would be, I would hate it. It would suck. I don't want to feel that.
I do know the Hot Take Hockey live stream would be absolutely ridiculous, though. John would be losing his mind over there during that game. So I'm there for it.
Yeah, that just for that.
Just for that.
Yeah.
Let alone Steve Dangle's post games.
Oh my gosh. That combination, they should combine. We should find a way to mash that up.
Not to mention the hockey podcast post game. Man, that'll be really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Islanders put 5 players in front of the net and hope Barzell gets a break on transition.
Yeah, the coach chiming in there. Yeah, I mean, that's what I hate about the Islanders. The Islanders, like 2 years ago, that's basically their game plan, was just suffocate the Penguins and just like barricade their goalie. It was almost like Devils hockey, like back in the day with Brodeur in the early 2000s. And like, I think there's a difference we'll talk about when we get to the series that I think the Penguins will bring to the game that might help them win that series. But man, I do worry about them just shutting down Pittsburgh again. It's in the back of my mind.
So what is Pittsburgh? Let's start there. What is Pittsburgh bringing this year that they did not bring the last 2 years?
So I think Pittsburgh overall as a roster, well, first, look back at last year. Last year was a complete disaster for the NHL in terms of there was such a big gap when the teams played and then they had to go to the playoffs. So for a team like Pittsburgh, which has a lot of veterans, it took them time to get their feet under them, to get that speed up. And with Montreal being a young team, I mean, they were just out skating them. Of course, Price was just putting on a show as well. He was healthy. He was ready to go. So I felt a lot of Pittsburgh's disaster in the playoffs was because of that big gap, and they just didn't have that momentum going in that they could have had initially. But when we look at 2 years ago at that series, I think Pittsburgh doesn't have some of the weaknesses they have. So I think they have a deeper roster up front in terms of their forwards. I think they're a faster team. And specifically, on defense. I think they move the puck faster. I think they skate faster. And I think that will allow them to break down and transition the puck up the ice a lot better than what they were able to do 2 years ago, where we don't have, speaking as a fan, we don't have, Schultz and Jack Johnson again with that third pair that's just a disaster. So I think Pittsburgh, just what they've been able to do defensively, I think is the sleeper part of their team that not a lot of people are talking about.
Devin, Sean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, great points. The D, and if you've watched playoff hockey like we all do, you know that the depth on defense is massive. There will be injuries. Who's going to be stepping in? Cody Ceci secretly been really, really good, especially at the beginning of the year. And wish I saw that more in Toronto. But like going down the list, they just have great depth, and talk about amazing leadership. Getting Jeff Carter, spectacular pickup at the trade deadline. And how could you not count them out? The only thing that I am questionable about is their goaltending. Tristan Jarry, he hasn't been the best. His consistency isn't there. Casey DeSmith, he's a great backup, but if they have to rely on Casey DeSmith because Jarry isn't stepping up, that's where stuff can go south pretty quick.
Yeah, for me, I like I like Pittsburgh's matchup up front versus the Islanders. And their blue line is able to get it done. Has been able to get it done this season. And I agree with Devin in terms of it. I think it does come down to the goaltending, because we know what the Islanders are going to get the goaltending and the defense with just being a Barry Trotz, Lou Lamoriello, park the bus team. And then they've got Varlamov and Ilya Sorokin that they're really good at it behind that defense and that system. So if they can, if Pittsburgh can get up in a game, it's going to be you're gonna see the Islanders have to take chances, and that's the game that Pittsburgh wants to play. But if Pittsburgh gets down early, that's when Trotz will be just evil laughing, because he knows he's going to be able to control the pace of play a lot more when that happens.
There's a couple of first of all, there's one criminal. We've already talked about this, but Jake Gensel is criminally underrated as a criminally underrated. That
both the wings on the first line are criminally underrated.
Yeah,
Rust as well.
Right, yeah, him too. And Jason Zucker is a guy that I think he's going to be an X factor in that series too as well. But Jake Gunsel, by the way, we should be talking about him in terms of he should be on an Olympic team. Like, that guy should be on an Olympic roster. I believe he's Canadian, is he not?
No, he's American.
He's American.
Yeah, he should be on that American roster. That should be a slant. That should be a no-brainer to me.
The thing is, Kev, is like when you play with Crosby, people don't actually know how good you are. It's like, it was the whole kind of Chris Kunitz thing too. And I think Gensel season to season has probably been more productive than Kunitz, but I could be wrong there. So,
or Dominic Simone as well.
Yeah, Dominic Simone was a whole nother problem, just because he couldn't score. He was great with puck possession, all that stuff, but he just couldn't score. He couldn't put the puck in the net.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing with Pittsburgh this series that I think is going to be Brian Burke. I mean, it's not on the ice, but Brian Burke versus Lou Lamoriello in terms of if you need, if something needs to happen, if the ref isn't going the way that Pittsburgh wants, that Brian Burke is going to say something. I thought it was nice that he taught everyone how to tie a tie. I don't know if you saw that TikTok, but
that's perfect. I love having Burke up in the front office. I love it, man. It's awesome. I know some people don't like him, but I will say with Pittsburgh, I think they led the NHL in goals. And they had the third most man-missed games, including having Evgeny Malkin out for 30 games this year. So, that just speaks to their depth up front in terms of their explosiveness. And I love what Sean said about the first goal. I know that's like really cliche or whatever, like first score, get up in the game, get the momentum. But especially in this series, because of how the Islanders want to play, like I felt that was a big problem for Pittsburgh the last two playoffs, where they just started a little slow. They couldn't get that first goal. And Montreal and New York, the way that they play, it just suited their styles perfectly. And they were able to suffocate the Penguins at the end of the day. So hopefully that doesn't happen as a Pittsburgh fan.
I think the first goal is more important in this series than any other series in the first round because of that. You look at St. Louis, Colorado, both teams can score and both teams can turn it on. Carolina, Nashville, same thing. Mm-hmm. Boston, Washington, both of them have the top end talent that can turn a game around, even if the things are going the wrong way for them. And it's just with the way that Barry Trotz coaches this team, if he can get a lead, he's going to suffocate. He's going to try and suffocate any sort of pace, any sort of speed, any sort of flow out of the game. And when he does, they win. And it's just, I just think that if you compare it to all the other series, the first goal is much more important in the Pittsburgh Islanders series than any of the other ones.
And if we're talking about depth within the lineup, Mitch brought up a good point. Once Malkin got out, who stepped in? Jared McCann.
Yeah,
he was center of the second line. Yep, that's right, Canucks fans.
Why did the Canucks trade him? Can I just ask why?
The whole thing was that I think they rushed him into the NHL. He let it get to his head a little bit.
Okay.
And then Benning got excited for a big physical defenseman in Eric Goodbranson. And speaking of the whole circle of this, everything here is because you, as a Penguins fan, you had to deal with Eric Goodbranson.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Eric Goodbranson in Vancouver, of course, and then I saw him go to Pittsburgh, and I was like, okay, I was giving Pittsburgh the benefit of the doubt, because whenever Pittsburgh makes a move, I'm like, okay, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and then you see him actually play. He just didn't fit the style of play either at all. Like, I could understand maybe if you're a different team, but it just didn't make sense. But Jared McCann, I think he's been great even before Carter, but since Carter has been in, they have a relationship. You see them constantly talking on the bench and going over things. It's almost like a big brother, little brother thing. So look out for that on the third line too for the Pens. Do you guys have any X factors on the Islanders that you think could maybe break open the series if they're to win it?
Yes. You have Kyle Palmieri. He really hasn't worked out since being traded there as of yet, but he can be definitely an X factor. Jordan Eberle, he hasn't really. This last half of the season has not been good for him. Outside of that, I mean, JG Pageau, he's always a sneaky good pick too. The one thing that they will be missing though is their captain, their leader in Anders Lee. I don't know if people are talking about that enough because their lineup there, it hasn't really changed that much in the past 3-4 years.
No,
right?
Defense
a little bit, yeah. You had the emergence of Adam Pelech, Ryan Pulox, Scott Mayfields of the world there, but that fourth line has been there for how long?
Yeah. I mean, they're right? The most famous fourth line I've ever seen. Everybody talks about them it's funny. It's like they're the most famous players on the team. They play on the fourth line.
They're this generation's grind line.
Man.
Yeah.
For me, I'm gonna put two, and they're both really young players in Oliver Wahlstrom and Noah Dobson. If either of them can step up and really take the next step, that's gonna be huge for the Islanders, because we all know how good Barzal is. Eberle's really good.
He destroys Pittsburgh, Eberle, every time. So I gotta throw him in there too.
That second line, I don't think people realize how good that second line is with Brock Nelson, Olivier, and Josh Bailey. But Wallstrom's playing with Palmieri and Pajot on the third line, and that third line could be a very key line for the Islanders, especially if they can start potting goals. And if we know Palmieri can, if Wallstrom's can start doing that as well, then they can run literally 3 scoring lines, and then that fourth line out there, and there's no reason to overtax any of the lines.
Wallstrom, he's been streaky this year, so he needs to find that consistency. And they've done a really good job in developing him. So if he can find that, then you got to watch out. But Anthony Beauvillier, he's been really, really consistently getting better every single year. And if they're going to do anything, he needs to be a big contributing factor to that, because you can't rely on that top line within Barzal and Eberle, because if that's what they're relying on, it's not going to work out well for them.
Yeah.
The one
Leo's on that line too. Don't forget about that ex-Leaf.
Yep, that's right. Just ask Jack Edwards what he thinks of Leo Komarov.
Oh my gosh! Oh, that's going to be fun too.
I do think, like you guys are saying though, with Crosby versus Barzal, that's kind of going to be a marquee matchup. But I think what's really going to determine who wins the series is the second, third line matchups, probably.
Yep.
But I do want to get to Crosby here in a second. I mean, this whole year the focus has been on the scoring of Connor McDavid, and rightly so. Let's be honest. I mean, as much as Hot Take Hockey mentioned Leafs Bruins, there's going to be a bunch of people that will want to see McDavid versus how motivated is Crosby going to be?
Well, I think this whole team has a different level of motivation, because before the year, people were picking them to miss the playoffs. The Penguins haven't missed the playoffs in like 15 years. It's like the longest running streak in professional sports. So they turned it on this year and they made the playoffs again and they won the division. But I think because they've been eliminated early, they're going to have that initial fire that they didn't have the last couple of years, because they were kind of, we won back-to-back, and then, we lost to the Stanley Cup champs the year after, and then they were stunned the 2 years in a row. But I think most of the core roster that won those cups is there, and I think they're going to be motivated. For sure.
No. Yeah, it'd be it's got to be very specific who gets into that Final Four for them to be playing in the semifinals. They would have to be playing in the finals most likely if that was going to be the case. But
that
would be great for hockey, by the way.
It'll be amazing.
Oh, it would be fantastic.
Spectacular. The networks would go freaking nuts over that. Oh my God. But it's Crosby, he's a competitive guy. So I don't think it needs to be much to really get him going to really do that. But he can't be thinking about that right now. He's got to be thinking about, playing the Islanders and making sure that he gets into the second round. Because remember last year they played Montreal and they got out, and everybody had them as a lock going into the second round.
The guy I need to be motivated, Kev, is not Crosby. It's Malkin.
Yeah, that's true.
Malkin is the guy that makes or breaks Pittsburgh every season. When he has 20-plus points in the playoffs, they go far. When he doesn't, they don't go far. That's just period.
Well, you got to think that Jeff Carter was brought in to kind of help with that secondary, tertiary scoring as well.
Does anyone pick the Islanders here?
I do. Sorry, Mitch. I have.
Give me your reasons why.
They can suffocate, and I just feel like you're right. If Malkin's not on, then Pittsburgh has a tendency to blow up, if you will. The goaltending for Pittsburgh is a question mark for me. You need to make sure that you do have a good number one goalie, and if he gets hot, that's fantastic. Then Pittsburgh can definitely go far. But just the Barry Trotz style, it can be a little boring, kind of Ottawa Senators-esque back half a decade ago. Very similar to that, and I just don't see. I have a hard time betting against defensive teams because defense wins championships, as cliche as it is, but it's true. So I think that if their top players are going and within that style, it's going to be hard to beat.
It's a coin flip for me. You look at it, and the Islanders were 2-4-2 against the Penguins this year, but we know Barry Trotz can get it done in the playoffs, at least for one series, if not more. We know that Varlamov and Sorokin are good in net, and we know that if they get up, that's going to be a tough slog for Pittsburgh to get through them. So I think it is a coin toss for me. I still I think I'm leaning towards the Islanders as well, just because of the goaltending. But I could see this going 7 games and it being an absolute war, and that's what I want. That's what I hope for, because that'll be great entertainment.
Well, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with Pittsburgh here. I think they have the scoring depth to get by. I know Barry Trotz is a damn good coach, though. I totally respect him, but I think I'm going to stick with Pittsburgh here. I think there's scoring depth. I think the reemergence also of Chris Letang as well, I think is going to be also a factor here as well. But I do think that the series is a long series. This is in the sixes or sevens.
Yeah. I'm going with Pens in 6. I've been saying it for a while. I'm pretty confident in this Penguins team this year. I was a little nervous the last couple of years just because of how they entered the playoffs. But when you look at how Pittsburgh's been entering the playoffs, I think Tristan Jarry in his last 20 games is 14-2-2 as a starter. And the Islanders, I think, are below 500 the last 10. So, like, just looking at who's on the hot streak entering the playoffs, it favors Pittsburgh. This year, the series favors Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh has made the right adjustments roster-wise to be able to overcome the Islanders in this series. I'd be disappointed if they lost.
So my question would be, do you think that the sweep 2 years ago is going to be in Pittsburgh's head, and maybe they're already winning that battle?
I mean, maybe, but when you look at the team, I would hope they have enough championship experience where it won't really affect them. It will only motivate them. And I know that everybody loves talking about the coaching edge for the Islanders, but let's not forget Mike Sullivan's a pretty good coach. He has
he's won a cup too.
He's got 2.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Let's move on here to some of the other series here, and the other one is Washington-Boston. Literally 4 points separate. So one of the closer ones, I think. This is probably going to be a lot of people's main event. You've got the Marchand versus Wilson. We've had that discussion on our podcast. Who you would rather have?
What do you think, Kev?
Without question, Marchand.
He's a better player. Anybody disagree there? Okay.
No.
Okay, good. But who would you rather have in this series? Marchand still?
Marchand.
Yeah, you would. And I think one of the differences is he knows when to be the pest and when it's time not to be the pest. He's mastered the art of it, where I don't think Tom Wilson has figured that out yet. And I think that is one thing. You've got everybody who, everybody wants to compare and wants to have this type of center, and the Bruins have Patrice Bergeron. Washington, though, they have, I would probably still give the edge in terms of forwards. Goaltending is going to be an interesting issue here, and I don't know. I think this is good. This has the potential to be a long series. But as much as I look at Washington as they won a cup a couple of years ago, I'm still not sure if I trust this team to win a series. Am I crazy?
Well, if they were maybe playing a different team, you'd feel more confident because these two teams are very evenly matched. But I just look at them this year and I'm a little nervous about the whole getting healthy at the right time, trying to come in a little just, Ovi coming back into things and again, with the whole speed of the game at the playoff level, you might be down 2 games before he really hits his stride, and then you're trying to come from behind in the series, and I don't really trust them either this year. I think they're a different team. I look at their defense and I'm a little nervous about it, especially like the bottom couple pairs they have. I think Boston has the edge in the net, and I think Boston has the edge on defense personally.
Yeah, I don't see. There's too much veteran presence within Boston to really. They've been there before multiple times. They're never out of it, and I have a hard time thinking that Vanacek and Samsonov can really step up and win a couple of games or like steal a couple of games from the Boston team with the Marchands. Not to mention Taylor Hall on the second line. That's a spectacular pickup by them.
What
and I
was that trade? I don't get to talk about these things because I'm stuck in NFL land. What was that trade?
Hall handcuffed the team and said, "I'm only going to go to one team," and that was it. So that's where that was. It's crazy how much power he had, but because when the Taylor Tyler thing was a first overall pick, they both went there, and he loved the city and he loved the town. And why wouldn't you want to go to a veteran team like that that has won cups and or has been there the entire time? And that's also why I just can't go against Boston. They're too good. Not to mention, when will Samsonov be back from his protocol? So you're relying on Vanacek to carry this team, and Kuznetsov's not in as well because he's on that protocol. And that I don't think there's been enough talk about that either. Them breaking protocol again as they did at the very beginning of the year, and Kuznetsov was sat out because he broke that protocol. That's an assumption. That's not anything. But then a day later, he was on the COVID list. So not having one of your top 2 centers. Once again, I think the depth of Boston is going to just grind out Washington. I think it's Boston in 5.
Ooh,
wow!
I don't see that.
That's
a bold take.
Yeah.
Hot take, Devin.
Well, I mean, look.
Sean's on mute. There.
I don't mind that take, Dev. I keep looking at it, and if you throw Kuznetsov in and Ovechkin's plays well, and you've got that, there's too many question marks with Washington right now.
Yeah.
Then with Boston, you've got. You said you got Taylor Hall, and don't forget Craig Smith on that second line with Krejci. And then you've got Richie and Coyle and Corrali as the third line. Yeah. And then they've got Jake DeBrusk on the fourth line right now, right? And he's a guy who has played up in the top 6 for them. And if he can find his game, their blue line is
McAvoy's a stud.
McAvoy's really good. Carlo's underrated. Grzelcyk is a good little player, but I just that's my only wonder is outside of McAvoy and Carlo, can they keep up with the physicality that Washington's going to bring?
I do think it's going to be kind of like that open series where it's really physical, it's just really fast, a lot of goals, like almost like a Pittsburgh, Philadelphia sort of vibe. It's going to be like 5-4 every game, like 4-3.
A lot of transition.
Yeah.
And I think that Boston will be able to weather that, but as they go on into the playoffs, I think that once again, if there's any injuries on that back end, like Sean was saying, after those top 2 players, it's kind of scary to see who will be stepping up within the top 4 defensive pairings, if there is any on that top end. So I think they'll be able to weather the physicality that Washington will bring, but it's just as far as going on into the playoffs, it's questionable.
The other question I have with Boston, I don't want to say a question, but I mean, it was a very unfortunate situation where Tuukka Rask last year was had to leave the bubble. I do think he's going to rebound, but they do have a really good backup in Jeremy Swayman as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if they use 2 goalies in this series.
Yeah.
Don't forget Yaroslav Halak too.
Oh yeah, him too. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they go up in the series, Kev's right. If it's like 3-0 or 3-1, I could definitely see them using Swayman or Halak for sure. That's a good point there, Kev.
Kevil's a big 2 goalie guy in the playoffs.
two goalie guy in the first 2 rounds, and then you figure out who your hot hand is and go for it. I don't disagree, and that's why going on to the next. Well, I mean, that's why Minnesota is so intriguing, right?
Do we want to go to the West, or do we want to go to?
Let's go, Kev.
All right, Vegas, Minnesota. I think this is fascinating to me. Vegas has had a lot of playoff success. I mean, 2 of their first 3 years, they've been at least in the Final Four. They had that wild game against the San Jose Sharks a couple of years ago that prevented them from moving on. Or was it the Sharks or was it Colorado? They didn't get to the Final Four. That wasn't that game. What the hell am I talking about? I was thinking about San Jose, Colorado. Sorry, I was thinking about that, not about Vegas. But Vegas didn't. Never mind.
I don't remember either, Kev. You're good.
Vegas lost in 2019 playoffs. Vegas lost to San Jose in Game 7.
Right.
Of the first round.
They were up 3-1 in that series, though.
Yeah.
Were they not?
That's right. And then they had that blown call.
Yes, that was the blown call.
Changed the entire series.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, the vaccine just affected my brain.
The microchip, man, just changing.
The microchip is in my brain. Yeah. But Vegas has been successful. Minnesota, we can't say has had the same playoff success. However, they probably have the face of the series in Kaprizov. And Minnesota's had Vegas's number. I think that this is a longer series than a lot of people are giving it credit for. And I think one of the things that I think is fascinating to me is Vegas led the West for a good chunk of the season, at least 90% of this season. And Colorado went in and took it over. I'm going to call the upset here. I'm thinking Minnesota is going to beat Vegas.
Wow.
You look at their season series. They were 5-1. Minnesota's 5-1-2. Against Vegas, but the goals for and against were even. There's 24 goals. Both teams scored 24 goals.
Was it one of their 8-0 games or something like that?
Because but you look at that and there's not much there. I don't think there's much separating these teams. I don't think people realize how good Minnesota is. All that being said, they're a younger team. Vegas knows what it takes to win series and win games in the playoffs. I still think Vegas ekes this out, but it's going to be a long series that's going to be really fun to watch, and it's going to be a war.
If Minnesota is going to do well, it's on the back of Cam Talbot. It has to be. He hasn't had the best numbers. I think his numbers are about 0.9, or he's about 900 save percentage right now. So it betting against Fleury and Lainer is very, very hard for me. I want Minnesota to win, but I think it will be a better series than most people do think it's going to be. It's probably going to go 6 or 7, but I think overall Vegas does have it, has that playoff experience, the tout, and overall just experience. But you can't count out Minnesota. It could be a Tampa Bay Columbus series of 2 years ago. You never know. And the teams that that are expected to win, it doesn't happen. There's upsets, and this definitely could be one.
I think I love Vegas. I think it's between them and Colorado to go to the Cup. To be honest with you in this, or at least, what would have been the West. But like, I feel pretty confident in those two teams. I like Vegas overall, just their grit. Like you guys keep saying, kind of like playoff style. They have that. They have the proven goaltending. They have proven guys in the playoffs. Just that their overall style, their overall team play is just consistent. I know Minnesota is a fun team. They have a lot of new faces now. And I'm expecting a good series. Like I like what you said, Kev. I think it's going to go longer than people think. But I think Vegas should be able to pull it out.
If there's one spot that Minnesota can take them out, I think it's depth down the center. And that sounds hilarious with Minnesota being the team that everyone says should be after a number one center, but they've got some good sort of not quite number one centers, but guys that can do, like Eriksson Ek is really, like, I don't think people realize how good of a shutdown guy he is. You've got Victor Rask as your third line center, and then and I think they've got the ability. And that if there's one real weakness on Vegas, it's down the middle. They got William Karlsson, Chandler Stevenson's played well, but I think he's more of a better in that second/third line role. But they don't have much after that.
Yeah, that's where I'm thinking too. Like Chandler Stevenson as your number one center, I think that's interesting.
They're a bit top heavy forward wise.
Yeah, but Minnesota, I would give Minnesota the edge on defense. They're 6 over the Vegas, even though Vegas has probably.
You think so?
Yeah. Isha will tell you Jared Spurgeon is one of the most underrated players in the game.
He's good.
He's really good at. Ryan Suter still does the job there.
That first pair for Vegas is awesome, though.
Yeah, and I really do like Zach Whitecloud as well. And goaltending, we've seen Marc-Andre Fleury do it before. And when the chips are on the line, it's hard to doubt Fleury. But I just think Minnesota has the depth to pull this off.
Well, Pietrangelo, talking about defense, he's coming off an injury too, so it's whether or not he's able to find his top gear. Because if he doesn't, I mean, yeah, they have decent depth on there, but I do think Minnesota does have a better depth on the defense. Once again, like if injuries pop up with any team, then who's coming into that to that next role? You never know, and you know that there's
ready for the series.
I believe so. Yes, he was in and out of their last 5 games, but I believe he is. And I don't think it's anything serious. I think they wanted to make sure that he is good for the playoffs. So
I saw day to day. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, he needs to be playing at his top level, especially how much they freaking paid for him in the offseason.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. It's going to be a closer series and one that I think people are going to watch a little bit more than or should watch a little bit more than maybe they will. Colorado, St. Louis. We've got the champs from a couple of years ago who came from pretty much out of nowhere to win against a team that the couple years ago, the Flames, we thought the Flames would just roll over them, and now they're right now one of the envies of both the Flames and the Canucks in terms of an organization and what they've built in terms of young talent. It's hard for me to see where St. Louis wins this series. It would be to me, it would be a drastic upset if St. Louis beats Colorado. That would be one of the largest upsets. I'm not trying to be. I don't think I'm being ridiculous here. I think that this is Colorado's to lose.
And it's not a knock against St. Louis. It's just that's how good Colorado is when they get going. Yeah. And if they're running all cylinders, they've got Rantanen going, they've got McKinnon going, they've got Makar and Gerard going, and then Grubauer is just making the saves he needs to. I don't see how St. Louis can beat Colorado.
I personally think it is a knock. I like that St. Louis should be better than that they are. They have not played well this year. They're so inconsistent. Picking up Torrey Krug in the offseason, it's worked out kind of, but it's not Torrey Krug of the Boston Bruins. And that I don't know. It baffles me how inconsistent they have played. They don't give up a lot of shots, but Binnington hasn't been the same Binnington of the year that they won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago. And I just don't. I think that they're better on paper than they actually are on the ice right now. And yes, they have good defense. They have Justin Falk, Torrey Krug, Parenko, Scandella, Vince Dunn, Bortuzzo. Like they have good depth on defense. And I just obviously the firepower up front. Tarasenko, he hasn't been the best coming back from his injury because he had I believe shoulder injury or shoulder surgery. Good Lord. And he hasn't been able to produce like he has been. So in order for your St. Louis to actually have a chance here, Tarasenko needs to be better and Binnington needs to be better.
Yeah, I think what you said was like they have a lot of names. Like when you look at their lines, like you look at it, they're like, okay, Hoffman, Bozak, Shen, Perron, O'Reilly. Like you look at their names and everybody knows those names, but they haven't really been gelling or meshing together. Sorry, Sean, I cut you off there.
Oh, I think you said it right there, Dev, in terms of it's Binnington. This team is good, but when your goaltender isn't playing at the top of his game, you're not good. It's tough to win consistently. And the way he's played since they won the cup,
they extended him too.
And they extend, to me, it just you look at Binnington, who hasn't been the same, hasn't been that arrogant, cocky Patrick Waugh-esque goalie that he was in that playoff run. And I think I think that's a fair, like, for a playoff run, because remember that's how Waugh got his name and his start and everything, and he has that arrogant attitude, and that's what makes Binnington so fun to hate, is he's got that as well. But he hasn't been able to be that top end goaltender since that playoff run, and unless he's able to turn it on, you look at that Colorado team, and it's just that there's too much firepower, and they're going to find a way to exploit his weaknesses and create offense when St. Louis is going to be chasing the game.
Yeah. It's tough for me to see where St. Louis wins this. Do we want to go to the north, or do we want to go to the south? Because the reason I'm asking is Sean has a hard out, or the central. Sorry, I call it the south because it feels like it is the south. It is literally
when you look at the playoff the playoff matchups, it is the south.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking, let's go. Okay. Let's go. Let's start with the funner series. The main event of that one would be Tampa Bay, Florida. You've got Florida. You've got a guy who's won 2 cups, and Joel Quenneville. You got a team with like too bad fans. Even in the before times, didn't come and watch this team. Barkov, Huberdeau. There's so much talent on that team that I wish people watched more. You've got some unbelievably interesting goaltending situations going forward. Whoever has got Florida in our expansion draft preview has got some fascinating decisions to be made there. You've got Tampa Bay, who's won the cup, and getting bodies back. I think this is going to be a rough, fun, tumble series, but I'll start by saying I don't see how Florida can win it. I just think that Tampa Bay has the experience. I think if Florida had I think the loss of Aaron Ekblad is huge, and I know that they replaced him, but without Aaron Ekblad, I don't see how Florida can win a 7-game series against Tampa. Prove me wrong, kids.
I worry about the whole trying to get all these guys back in the lineup for the playoff run. I'm telling you, as a Pens fan, we've done that like 5 times and it doesn't work. I'm just trying to tell, especially after you come off of a cup win too. I don't know. Florida's really good. I wouldn't be sleeping on Florida. I almost think they're going to upset the Lightning.
The Lightning's record against Florida this season is 3-5, and they were outscored
Don't sleep,
31-24. Mitch, I think you're onto something with the getting everyone back into the lineup without actually playing regular season games and everything, especially in this season. I think I don't think we're going to see the best of Kucherov, and by the time they do, we do see it, maybe too late. So I like Florida's forwards. You've got that again, set the depth down the middle. The addition of Sam Bennett, you've got Barkov, Bennett, Wenberg. Wenberg's one of those like guys who didn't fit in Torts' Columbus, but is still very skilled, a smart player, and someone that as a third line center is a great spot for him, especially playing with Frank Vetrano and Patrick Hornqvist. And then the lack of Ekblad may be a difference maker, but their blue line is still pretty decent. And they've got
Uyghur has been. Is it Uyghur? He's been really good this year.
Uyghur, yeah. He's been amazing to step in Ekblad's lack of, within Ekblad's injury. He's been absolutely spectacular. Sorry, Sean, keep going. Yeah,
and then, but they've also got a couple players who are built for playoffs and built for wars, and Radko Gudas. Like, so he's going to run someone over, and there's going to be an absolute brawl. Like, that's going to happen. And then Montour, Nudavara, both like. I don't think Nudavara is one of those sort of sneaky good defensemen that people don't quite realize is like he is a legit like second pair defenseman, but he's in Florida, so people don't realize that. And then you've got the goaltending. If Bobrovsky's going, like it's tough. He's stunned the world against Tampa before.
Yep. I think we're Florida. I'd say Florida in 7 for me. I don't like the only X factor for me is Vasilevsky. If Vasilevsky is lights out, then that's going to be the biggest thing. But I just think it's Florida's year. They played very well. Joel Quenneville has been. It's taken him a little bit of time just to get the players on the same page, I think. And once again, playoff Sam Bennett. As I said at the beginning, I think that he has. If they go far, he's going to be an X factor. He has to be. And I really think that the depth within Florida is underrated. Like I said, Mackenzie Weegar has been amazing. Nidovara has been really good, and Carter Verhaeghe as well. Sean didn't mention him. He's been a great pickup for them. So nothing against Tampa. Like you guys have all said, it's about getting into game speed for Kucherov and for Stamkos. I just don't see that happening. And I think Sean said it best, or it was Sean or Mitch said it best, is that if they do start lighting up, it's gonna be too late. You can't get it. You can't just flip a switch and go into NHL regular season, let alone the playoffs. Like, you got to be ramping yourself up. It doesn't matter if you're do as much as you can outside of inside of practice, but if you're not inside of a game within a certain time period, God, you're done. So Florida. I think it's gonna be Florida, Kev. Sorry,
Kev, you're right though. Like, if you just look at the teams on paper and you say like who's better, who's going to win the series, it's the Lightning. But I don't know. I just have this funny feeling about Florida.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I'd probably be more apt to do it if Ekblad was in there. I mean, this Tampa team. You got a left side of Victor Hedman, Ryan McDonough, and Miguel.
I know, it's ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. And you got David Savard. They acquired David Savard at the deadline. You got Eric Chernak. You got Patrick Maroon, who's won cups. There's some experience there too. And they won the cup last year. So
that's Hedman's injured though. He's not 100%, and he won the Conn Smythe last year. that's going to be a massive turning point if they are going to go far. Which if without having a Hedman, it's going to be hard. But they do have that depth, it sounds ridiculous going against that team. It really does.
It does.
But yeah, I'm with Mitch. There's something about Florida this year.
Okay, fair enough. Is anyone giving Nashville a shot?
No.
I wonder if I think we're sleeping on Nashville, folks.
They're going to win a couple of games. It's not going to be a sweep, but it's not going to be like, yes, Nashville has had their number within the past 2 or 3 games going into the playoffs, but I don't think that Carolina had anything to prove or anything to really push themselves to go for it. And Carolina, they have, talk about depth. They have the depth. They could roll those 4 lines and be okay if Brittamore wanted to. And that defense, oh my God, that defense is stupid. It is ridiculous. You talk about expansion draft. I have Carolina. Seattle is going to get a great defenseman out of Carolina. Period and stop. It's going to be ridiculous. A Psyche or what? How the hell you say his name? Sky. I can't even do it.
Shea.
Shea. Thank you. Jeez. Yeah, Brady Shea, underrated, hard-nosed defenseman. I don't know if you remember in the bubble, very first shift, he played his old team and he laid out one of their players against New York, and that set the tone for that entire series, and that set the tone for the playoffs, and I loved it. So the only question for me for Carolina right now is who's going to be in net. Mrazek, he's been injured. Nedeljkovic is really, really good and has come in. He's a rookie. He's played very well, but playoffs are a different animal. So, I mean, they could roll with any one of them. Even James Reimer's played well this year, but whenever Reimer's in net, I feel like they have to just outscore the opponent because he does let in goals. So that'd be my only question, but I don't think you can go wrong with that. But I'm not giving – I feel like I'm not giving Nashville enough credit right now, but Nashville, they're just
you know what it is, Devin? I feel like the general public who are not like hockey diehards or anything just don't really know how good Carolina is. Like, I think that's kind of what it is, especially being, in Canada. People don't really appreciate how talented the team is.
Yep. And we didn't even mention Sasha Barkov in Florida. Talk about one of the underrated players in the NHL. Aho, the exact same. He's a stud. He's an absolute stud and will win a series for Carolina. He doesn't have to, considering the players that are around him, but he's spectacular.
My only question is will Carolina be able to pick it up, because they've sort of backed into the playoffs. They had a chance. They played. I mean, they were 5-2-3, so they were basically 500 and lost their final 2 games going into the playoffs. They haven't really needed to be on. We saw what happens when you're not on when you first start the playoffs 2 years ago with Tampa. Let alone Edmonton and Pittsburgh last year in the bubble. Like, you need to be on. If Carolina can flip that switch, I don't think Nashville has a chance. But if they struggle and they aren't playing at their best or near their best, Nashville's got the ability to surprise. They've got Forsberg, Johansson, and Duchesne is a solid first line. Eli Tolvanen's found his game in the NHL after spending a year or so toiling in the AHL. He's finally starting to show the star score, like top 6 scorer that he can be. And then that blue line.
You're forgetting though, they have Eric Branson, bro.
As a top 4 defenseman. But you know what? It's funny though. The interesting thing is when the trade deadline started, there was like the Nashville Predators were in sell mode. It was like Philip Forsberg, Matthias Ekholm were, and they rolled. They rolled their way in. They're rolling into the playoffs. There's a part of me that wants to relate Carolina. I wonder if this is one of those situations where it's a Tampa Calgary a couple of years ago where they need to lose that from the first round and gain some of that. I don't know if they have the grit to go far to go very far. That's my one big concern with Carolina. I could see them beating Nashville, but
I mean, they did kind of gain that experience last year, did they not?
Last year before too. You know,
they got to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple of years ago. That's true.
Or is that what I'm thinking of? Either way.
Yeah, they played the Capitals, and the Capitals won it that year. So, I mean, you definitely have that experience. Sorry, I got to ask you guys, Mrazek or Nedeljkovic, who are you starting?
I would probably start Mrazek. He's
hot hand approach first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
But he's been injured. Like he's been a bit of a hurt bag this year. So that's why I ask, because Nedeljkovic has been amazing. And I mean, we're not talking about Reimer, but yeah, like who are you starting? So Kevin says,
I'd go with the healthy guy.
Go with the healthy.
If he stinks, then you switch it up.
Yeah, I mean, embarrassment of riches right there, really. But you know, I personally think it's Nedeljkovic, just because of where Mrazek has been. But you're definitely going to see 2 goalies within the series, within this playoff run for them easily, right? And then within the 2 rounds, or if they get past the first 2 rounds, you figure out who your hot hand is and ride that goalie.
I think you start with Nedeljkovic and go from there, because I think he's proven to be the better goalie this season amongst the 3, and you see what you have there, and then if you don't, but you still have a couple veterans in Mrazek and Reimer to fall back to.
Yeah.
And that's a great point, Sean, because all 3 of those goalies are in a contract year. They don't have contracts at the end of this year. One's an RFA, but Nedeljkovic. But yeah, it's really interesting. On the other side, you have Rene and Saros. Both of them played very well. And who are you starting? Rene?
Yeah.
Oh, I think they will. I'd start Saros. He's Nedeljkovic and Saros have the 2 best 5-on-5 save percentages in amongst the goalies who have played over 900 minutes at 945. And they're both near the top of the both near the top of the high danger save percentages as well. I think you have, like, as much as Rene is the veteran guy, I think you have to go with Saros.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I go with the veteran first.
That's Rene, me. Yeah. Well, this might even be his last year in
last
the
run.
NHL. Yeah,
that's the fuel to get you to the cup. Last run, last ride.
The Ray Lewis ride. Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, let's just say they've played Saros more in 36 games played versus 24 for Rene. As I said, Saros is a 945 save percentage at 5-on-5, and Rene is a 919. While their high danger save percentages are 868 for Saros and 820 for Rene. Like, that's why I think you have to go with Saros. It's not like it's a coin toss and you go with the veteran. I think you have to go with, like, especially going up against Carolina, you got to put your team in the best position to succeed. And with that, Saros is that right now.
Who's been winning as of late? Saros, like on this run.
Let's see here.
Well, I know that Rene, I believe he got a shutout in his last. I believe he got a shutout in his last game, but I think Saros has been their number 1A, if you will.
Yeah, that's always tough, man.
Yeah.
But at least you have that situation where you have a 1A, 1B, where at least you can fall back on somebody else.
Oh, for sure. Having that veteran of Rene and Saros, yeah, he's a smaller goalie, but he gets the job done for sure. The one thing we haven't talked about is the lack of defense on Nashville. I mean,
injuries.
Yeah, totally. Like I said, you have good Branson on that back end. Good God, it doesn't look good. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say. If they had those guys, maybe they got a chance because then they can at least lock down. But with the defense they have, I just don't see them competing for a 7-game series.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's fair. Yeah, and I mean this also. I mean, there's so many people in Carolina we don't get enough. Jacob Slavin, underrated defenseman. We talked about Aho, Svechnikov with one of the Michigan goals, and a possible Norris Trophy candidate and former Flame Dougie Hamilton, and which could be that will be a fascinating story if Dougie Hamilton and Adam Fox are nominated for a Norris Trophy.
Oh my God.
That will be
Kevil.
That is going to be even you know what? We'll rant more about that. Actually, more than me will be Sean. We'll actually rant more about that.
Yeah, it's valid. Very valid. And talk about the offseason with Dougie Hamilton. That's going to be an interesting contract negotiation, especially with that owner.
Yeah, and then you got Rod the Bod. And I mean, all he's going to have to do if he needs a call is to take off his shirt. That's what he's going to do. Take off the shirt. You going to argue with me about this?
Do the Tom Wilson flex in the penalty box.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, with Nashville, Yossi and Ekholm haven't played played the last couple of games just for rest purposes more than anything else for some reason. But if they can get that top four, they've got Fabro. They've got Ellis, Yossi, Ekholm. That top four is really good.
Is Ellis healthy?
He's played. I pulled up their last.
That's their chance. That's always Nashville's chance. The last few years is their defense. It's always a chance.
I believe Ellis is healthy.
Yeah, I've got the game. I pulled up the lines from their game versus the Stars at the beginning of the month. I tried to go back a little bit to see what their normal lines would be because they've been resting some players because they made the playoffs and didn't have to. And they've had it was Ekholm, Carrier, Ellis, Yossi, and Benning, Goodbranson. So that lineup doesn't have Fabro in it, and they've got Goodbranson, but he's playing a third pairing role, and then it's not like he's being overexposed, and he's big enough that he can play a bit of a playoff style.
Yeah, I know. You play on the stall line. It's not a bad matchup.
Yeah.
So it's not the blue line is where the Preds can make hay because that blue line will put up points as well. But like I said, on paper, it's not close. But we said that about Columbus versus Tampa a couple years ago, and Edmonton versus Chicago, and
they've been
everything right. Columbus, so it's just, I think it's right now. I would say it is you have to take Carolina, but you have to take Carolina, but it's not going to be a sweep, I don't think.
Let's quickly touch on the North. Maybe we'll save Devin and Sean for your picks for tomorrow, and get Mitch. But the first question I ask is there a North team? They will be a North team in the Final Four. Will a North team? What chances do you give a North team to get to the Stanley Cup final?
I mean, it just depends on the matchup. I think matchup is huge in the way where this is at this year, because I think these teams are all the teams that are expected to be there are all really close.
I think the Leafs are the only team with a shot. personally.
Yeah. And the weird thing about it is that you have no idea what this Final Four is going to look like and who is going to be playing who. So Sean's 100% right. You don't,
and how they match up too, because we haven't seen it.
Exactly, and that's what's so fascinating about this. And yes, it's a COVID year, and you can put an asterisk beside this this year. You put an asterisk beside Tampa Bay last year, but the fact is that they won. So asterisk or not, I think it's anybody's race really. And who's hot? How many games have they played? How healthy is that team coming out of the North? It's all questions that we will find out. But it sucks because we can't really handicap it at all. We can't go on and say, okay, Toronto probably is the best chance out of the North. But say if McDavid does McDavid things, don't count him out. Or if Winnipeg decides to play as a team and Hellebuck's been playing out of his mind, that's a good possibility too. I'm not giving much love to Montreal, but
Montreal's got no chance.
Yeah, if Carey Price is Carey Price, who knows?
Yeah.
I just don't have. I know that it's COVID year. I know we haven't seen them. I just don't think the division is very strong. I'm just going to be on. That's just my personal opinion. I think Toronto is the best team. They have the best roster, and if they can find momentum, finally get over the hump, they have a chance. I think the Oilers are still too top heavy, too many holes. I know they have the best player, but the Jets, I think, are, like you said, kind of too inconsistent. And the Habs, I just don't think have the talent. I think they'll be feisty. I just don't think they have the talent to compete. So honestly, I think it's Toronto or bust.
I don't see that. I look at Toronto and I think the skaters, I take the skaters' depth and everything all right there, but goaltending is a question mark for both teams. And Mike Smith has been a revelation for the Oilers. And I listened to Kevin Woodley talk at goaltending. He said that the changes that Mike Smith has made are ones that he thinks are going to be long-term sustainable changes that have made a huge difference to his game. And are the reason why he's played so well. Meanwhile, it's a bit of are they going with Jack Campbell, or are they going with Freddie Anderson in Toronto? Both have looked good at times. Both have not looked good at times. That's the biggest question mark for me with Toronto is can they get the goaltending that can take them not only past Edmonton? Because if you're going let's assume, because I think we're all probably agreement that it's going to be Toronto and Edmonton in the second round for the North Division playoff title.
It should be.
I don't know. I think Toronto,
I don't know.
Toronto is pretty much a lock, but I don't count out Winnipeg. You can't.
I wouldn't either.
With their defense, sure. But once again, if Hellebuck is able to be some sort of shadow of himself of last year, and if that depth, that top six is ridiculous. Even that third line's ridiculous on Winnipeg with Lowry, Kopp, and I know both Lowry and Kopp have been able to go into that top six, but you can't count them out, and this is where a coin flip is for me between those two teams. So, but yeah, Sean, sorry, you're going to a point there.
The reason I'm saying that, and I can hear those arguments, but Connor Hellebuck has above 900 save percentage, above 910 save percentage against every other team except for the Oilers, where he has an 877.
Oh.
The Oilers have his number. That's the issue. I agree. If there's any goaltender that can turn it on and become an absolute wall and completely surprise everyone, it's going to be him. It's going to be Connor Hellebuck. But right now, you look at the information that's available, but for argument's sake, let's say they said it's going to be Edmonton and Toronto in the second round, barring being goalied, right? I think if it becomes if it's a wide open series, which I expect it to be, it's just goals everywhere. I wouldn't rule the Jets out of winning that either.
it's going to be a shootout in every game. So it's going to be just a wild series of hockey.
Yeah, but you get there, and if it's Winnipeg versus Toronto or Edmonton versus Toronto,
yeah,
you look at that and like, does Toronto have the goaltending to make it into there, let alone to face off against any of Pittsburgh, Carolina, Florida, Tampa, Boston?
I don't think they're getting past. I don't think anyone's getting past those teams.
So
but I would give Toronto the best chance.
Yeah. I think it will be Jack Campbell that will start. They will give Freddie Anderson a start. They have to, especially that there is the politics involved because he is in his last year of his contract as well. So you got to expect him to that they will give Anderson a shot, but I think they will ride Jack Campbell a little bit here in the first round and see exactly where he's at, because he has shown that he's been able to do it. But that is the biggest question mark, because I mean, haven't even talked about the defense or the forwards of Toronto, but the moves that they have made, that top four defense with Brody, Riley, Muzzin, that's awesome and that's scary.
Much better than before, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And then obviously that top six is just ridiculous, and I think they've made the right moves to get that leadership and that depth on forward with Wayne Simmons, Spezza, Thornton. Galchenyuk has been really, really good since being there on that second line. But it sounds like they're going to be pushing. They'll have Hyman with the top two, Matthews and Marner, and then they'll have Foligno with Tavares. So it'll be. I love that, but yeah, it comes down to goaltending. Sean's right.
And I also, I mean, if there's any series is that it will be interesting if there's an upset. If Montreal or Winnipeg wins game one, this changes. I think that's a significant change for two organizations that I mean, both the Oilers and the Leafs, the pressure's on them to do well. Too. So
Montreal does need to win that first game. They have to.
Yeah. And I
hope they do, just for like the compelling storylines.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then and then talk about hot take hockey and Steve Dangle after that first game.
Oh my gosh.
This is the worst team in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we want to pick a winner
of the division or of the series?
Of the Stanley Cup?
Oh, of the Stanley Cup.
Oh man, for me, I don't think I can. It is so hard because there are so many toss-ups and the potential matchups of let's say Carolina gets through, then you have either the Lightning or the Panthers to play against them. That's going to be an amazing series.
Yeah.
The Colorado Vegas potential. Washington could upset. I think that they're the underdogs, and they could upset Boston in the first round. And then you have Pittsburgh, New York. I don't know. It's too hard. But okay. I'm going to say, I said I wasn't going to, but I'm going to say Carolina.
Ooh, I like it.
I feel like this is Colorado's year.
I like Vegas. And I'm going to go full homer and say Pittsburgh. Because why not? I mean, might as well with all these good teams. But I mean, I like Carolina. I like the Avalanche. I think those are fairly popular picks. But I wouldn't be surprised. I think it will be Pittsburgh, Boston in the East. And I wouldn't be surprised if either of those teams made a run pretty deep. Because I think they've been playing playoff style hockey for a lot of the year. So
I'm leaning right now the Colorado Tampa. I think that might be the final.
Tampa repeat?
I think Colorado is going to take them down this year. I don't think it will be. I just think it would be too hard to. I just think Colorado is pretty much what Tampa was last year. They're the most skilled team. they've got pretty much everything. It's hard for me to see anyone beating them, and I'm with Sean. I think Colorado does it, but it will be absolutely fascinating. Mitch, before we go, tell us what you've got going on.
All right. Well, you can find me over at the Bottom Line View, NFL content, basically every single day covering. Right now, we're going to have some schedule release videos talking about the best games of the season, most anticipated ones that I'm pumped up for. Seahawks will be on the list, Kevil. And nice. Yeah, so NFL stuff, Bottom Line View. I also am on a podcast, Dr. Jen Welter, who is the first NFL women coach, the Juke podcast. Make sure you subscribe over there as well. Some of the clips are on the Bottom Line View, so if you want a little taster, you can find them on the channel.
Now, is the Bottom Line View have an actual Twitter account now, or did you?
No, it's just me, bro. Like we had one, but I was just like, I'll just make it Mitch Milani because I'm basically the Bottom Line View. So
fair enough. I get it. How do we follow
Mitch
everyone?
Milani, Milani.
Right. And how do we follow everyone else?
I am BeardyConnect03 on Twitter.
Follow me on Twitter, Gordhow09.
Schneid's SCHNEIDZ, Tyler TNOBLE, I am KEVOLE, podcast_hockey, Facebook.com the hockey podcast, YouTube.com the hockey podcast. Subscribe. We will be back tomorrow. We'll hear from Chris, we'll hear from Tyler. We'll probably get into what's going to happen with the Canucks in the off season. We'll probably dig into the Flames, and Dylan Dubé is expected to play center. Love to hear Devin's opinion on that, and we'll talk more about the North and get their playoff predictions part 2. Mitch, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.